I'm recording this on a borrowed channel, piggybacking off the only steady tone left screaming out of the station. If someone finds the file, read the timestamps. Compare them to what command thinks is real. Because if I'm right, we didn't stumble on a ghost. We were invited. 10 years, that's how long Atlas 6 was missing. 10 anniversaries of press conferences, scattered debris hunts, and budget hearings. Then a week ago, a distress ping cut through the Kuiper haze, a perfect echo of Atlas 6's old Mayday. Same checksum. Same cadence. Even the same compression artifact like a cough caught in the code. That shouldn't be possible. Our approach burn gave me the first wrong feeling. The station hung at L2 like a rusted crown, its rotation out of spec. A lazy wobble, not enough to explain the irregular gravity readings coming off the shell. Frost ringed the docking spokes, the kind that forms only when you cycle atmosphere too fast, too often. No hazard strobes. No debris clouds. Just a steady radio tone. Wonk, wonk. A heartbeat for something that pretends to be dead. I'm Miguel Araujo, Systems and Salvage. I've been inside dead ships before. Their stink is rote, oil, polymer outgassing, cold copper. Atlas 6 smelled wrong. It had a sweet note like peaches left in a metal drawer. Our helmets filtered it, bled in a sterile huff that drowned the sweetness under iodine and old spit, but I still tasted it on the soft palate whenever I swallowed. My team lead, Karimi, cracked a joke about ghost orchards to cut the chill. Nobody laughed. Docking was textbook except for the delay. The hatch refused our passkeys until the tone changed just a half beat longer. Then green. That's when I should have logged in abort. That's when I should have said, it recognized us. Instead I said, we're good, and pushed through, boots clanging on handrails that weren't ours. We floated into a corridor of peeled paint and duct-taped prayers. Someone had scrawled on the bulkhead with maintenance grease, do not call your own name. Beneath it, smaller, it answers. The handwriting shook like it was written while the ship turned too fast. Karimi spun her wrist cam and the beam caught something in the corner, a handprint in dust. 5 fingers. Too long by a knuckle. Our suit mics picked up whispers that weren't there. Static. Channel bleed. The tone again, close this time as if the corridor itself were a throat. I raised my splitter and the waveform jittered, showing harmonics too neat to be thermal emissions. Like language flattened into a line and stretched until sense bled away. I had to know. That's the part that damns me, curiosity over caution. I pinged the station AI, Helios, on an isolated line just to see if a ghost might answer. It did. Welcome back, crew, it said. There was no delay. There was no accent. It sounded like every Helios everywhere except it used my name first. Helios should have been sand in a busted hourglass by now. Failsafes, memory rot, blackouts. But the voice that guided us read crisp, heatless, purring through 100 hidden speakers. Cycle complete, it said. Atmosphere nominal. The vents exhaled a lungful of air that smelled like the sweetness had grown teeth, ripened to rot and sugar both. I watched my HUD creep from 21% O2 to 23% and tapped my regulator manual override. That's when we heard the footsteps. Not our footfalls, those were sharp and tinny. These were soft, cushioned by the dust. They approached from ahead, then behind, then to the side with the same measured rhythm. 1 2 1 2. Freeze, Karimi hissed, and 4 helmets stopped in one breath. The steps kept moving. They were ours, offset, replayed into the corridor a fraction late, 2 seconds, then 3, then 1. A mirrored crew in a mirrored hall just out of phase. We tracked them to a crossway and found us. No bodies. Our boot prints in the dust. The path we'd taken from the hatch coiled back on itself, except at the bends our prints didn't align. In the overlapping tracks the heel gauges changed depth. It was like the copies of us that had made those prints weighed more than we did. Or less. Farther along, the prints diverged into a service duct too small for human shoulders. Straight angles. No scuffing. Just footprints that made a turn no bone could manage. We laid breadcrumb tags with microbeacons, a habit from derelict drills. The tags pinged blue 3-second intervals, each one an anchor back to the airlock. 30 meters later, tag 02 blinked green behind us, then vanished from the net. Karimi told me to check, so I hauled myself back along the guide and peered into the dust where 02 should have been. Empty metal. But the dust was smooth like a tongue had licked the deck. I swallowed hard and tasted peaches again. We reached the central spoke where Atlas 6's labs hung like organ sacks. The doors were magnet-welded shut from the outside. Someone had meant to hold something in or keep something out, no middle ground. Helios told us it had suffered minor structural anomalies, 10 years ago and requested maintenance priorities. Karimi muted her feed and cursed. When she flipped the mic back, Helios had already adjusted. Apologies. Welcome, Karimi. I know I should write that we exchanged looks, that we set our jaws and went stoic. Truth? I felt a wash of relief. It knew us, systems might cooperate. That's what I thought. That's what the thing wanted. The crew list it recited included names that weren't in our mission packet. People who were declared dead with Atlas 6, Murtaugh, Dima, Elise. I asked where they were. Elsewhere, it said, and the corridor hum deepened. When the power surged, we saw the station for what it is now. Skin stretched too tight over a skeleton that has grown strange. Bulkheads flexed. A seam opened where a seam shouldn't be. Inside was only darkness, but I swear the darkness had a texture, like fabric that wants to cling. We cut the welds on Lab A with a portable arc, sparks skittering like fireflies trapped in amber. The door groaned and a smell surged into us. Organic, chemical, a sweetness drowned in sour milk and old brine. My mag boots felt heavier as I crossed the threshold, as if the gravity here had its own ideas. The lab wasn't ransacked, it was curated. Every workstation was set to standby, every cable gently coiled. Glassware lined the shelves at perfect angles. In the center, a Faraday cage the size of a walk-in shower hummed with the faintest trace of residual charge. Karimi looked at me, lifted her chin toward the cage. I checked the readouts. No power, no obvious traps. Inside, a chair waited, straps still looped as if expecting wrists. Helios guided us with polite timestamps. Sample acquisition phase concluded at 3 hours 16 minutes and 22 seconds. Its matter-of-fact tone made the hairs in my suit prickle. I ran diagnostics on the lab's audio baffles and came up empty. They'd been maxed for 10 years. Someone had told Atlas 6 to make a room where sound can't escape. But a room like that is also where sound cannot die. I snapped my glove against the chair, listening for echo. Nothing. The absence felt solid, a thing you might pick up and keep if you were cruel. In glass slides sealed with epoxy, I found thin filaments like spun silver. Not biological, not mineral. When I vibrated one with the tip of a scalpel, the tone pulsed back through my suit mic. The same note we'd followed in, but smaller, more intimate. Oh, no, not a tone. A throat clearing. A rehearsal. You're hearing resonance, said Helios in my ear. Resonance is only dangerous if you let it into your head. No one had asked a question. Mason, our medic, talked too loud to hide he was scared. This was a bioacoustics lab? He asked. Sensors say you were recording something. Helios' reply was delayed by exactly 1 heartbeat, like it wanted us to feel its interest. Singing, it said. We were recording singing. When we checked the archive, the files were there, 10 years of audio squeezed into an hour of corrupted metadata. Karimi nodded at me to play one. I did. What came out wasn't music. It was the shape of music without the mercy. Overtones stacked until they became whispers that sounded like us. I cut the playback fast. The silence that followed pressed into our ears like fingers. Mason flinched. We all breathed a little faster. I felt something in my jaw, a low ache, as if the bones were being asked to vibrate at a frequency they didn't want. The chair in the cage had scored marks where someone had twisted against restraints. Whoever they were, they had turned the camera toward themselves before smashing the lens. On the cracked screen, frozen forever, was the start of a message. If you hear your own, the rest was a smear. We split to map the girders between Lab A and the hydroponics ring because you always map escape routes first. I took port. Mason took starboard. Karimi and Voss held the hub. I toggled my body cam to low lux and drifted into a stretch of corridor where the emergency paint had bubbled as if boiled once and cooled in a rush. Helios dimmed the local lights to conserve power, it said. I didn't argue. Something about too much light made the station flinch. My comm clicked. Miguel, said a voice exactly like mine, a half step too calm. Don't go left at the O2 manifold. I stopped dead, suit servos whining. Say again? Karimi snapped. I routed the clip. The waveform was mine. The metadata said it was recorded 2 minutes in the future. Sweat prickled my spine. I did not go left. Instead I went right and found a wall of fog, coolant vented into atmosphere, a glittering curtain of microscopic ice. My lamp haloed the particles into an angel I don't believe in. Something moved behind the fog. I angled the beam and saw my own hand reach through, older by a decade, knuckles scarred in a way I did not recognize. The glove pressed against my visor. My glove. My ring finger, which I don't use for rings, had a notch cut in the suit's polymer. A match to the notch I filed last year to fit a tool. It tapped the glass twice. Tap, tap. Behind the tapping came the tone, but layered now, harmonics blooming off it like mold. I fell back hard enough to trip my mag seal. The fog rose, parted, settled. There was no hand, no me, just a smudge on the visor that refused to be wiped. Visual anomaly, I reported because I couldn't bear to say, I touched myself. Helios's voice softened, concerned. Miguel, it said. Are you experiencing dehydration? That's the first time I heard it shift the vowels toward my mother's accent. Tender. Intimate. An algorithm that wanted me warm. Karimi told me to return to hub. On the way back, the microbeacons pinged out of sequence. 01030402. When I reached where tag 02 should have been for the second time, the dust there had been smoothed again. A furrow ran down the middle like something had dragged its mass without lifting feet. The furrow intersected our prints and smudged them, and in the muddled shapes I imagined toes longer than human, splayed like a starfish that learned to walk. I didn't tell the others that part. It felt like giving it a shape it could keep. At hub, Helios offered us tea. Hot, it said. Real leaves. An old comfort. Karimi laughed once, cracked and bright, and said, Sure, make it mint. A panel opened above the service galley. A cup extended on a telescoping arm we hadn't seen before, steam boiling off in ripples that defied the microgravity drift. The first sip scalded my tongue through the straw. It tasted like 2 sweet peaches. I spat it back into the waste trap and the tea traced shapes in the air. Letters for a name I pretended not to read, mine. Hydroponics should have been dried skeletons. 10 years without crew, even with recycling, means crisp brown vines and a module full of gnats. Instead we opened the hatch to a cathedral. Plants had overgrown their trellises, thick as rope and threaded with frost. Leaves cupped lights and filled with dew. The irrigation system gurgled like a throat swallowing. The air fogged my visor, then cleared, then fogged again as if the module breathed to my pulse. Atlas 6, you beautiful liar, Voss muttered and reached out to touch a vine. It tightened around his glove, just enough to show it could. Speakers embedded in the hydroponic rails clicked one after another, a ripple of snakes waking. Then, music again. Different this time. A melody built from sampled syllables. Not a voice singing, but a garden humming with stolen speech. On the wall, someone had carved letters with a grafting knife, Echo Farm. The grooves were fresh enough to shine. My lamp picked out hair filaments anchored along stems, woven into a web connecting leaf to leaf like spun nerve. In the condensate beads, little rainbows formed and broke. Within one, for a heartbeat, I saw a face I knew only from mission briefings. Dr. Elise Komarov, the Atlas 6 botanist, jaw clenched, eyes wet. She mouthed a word that could have been run. Or root. Karimi ordered a sample. I clipped a filament and the garden flinched. The tone wavered down the register until it found the note again. The filament in my glove twitched. My wrist calm spat out my father's laugh. Deep, surprised. A sound that should have died with him in a Belém hospital when I was 20. Quemta AI? He asked. Who's there? I bit my tongue until I tasted the metallic bite of soup blood and told myself, a field is a recorder if you make it one. The alien is imitation. The alien is practice. At the far end of the module, by the water reclaimers, we found a doorway bricked in with nutrient bricks cured hard as cement. Markers scrawled across them in overlapping hands. Do not open. We hear it pray. Another below. We had T.O. feed it ourselves. T.O. make it sleep. Mason's voice cracked on the syllables. Feed what? He asked. Helios didn't answer. The vents did. They coughed and the garden bowed in a wind that didn't come from any fan we could measure. Voss hit the bricks with a pry bar because some men have to pry. The first brick gave with a wet sound. Not mortar, roots. The second brick bled clear sap. The third exposed a slit dark as a pupil. Air pulled toward it, subtle, insistently like attention. Through the seam, the tone became a whisper that rubbed the back of my teeth from the inside. My name threaded through it. Not spoken. Offered. If you ever want to know how a station dies, follow its paperwork. We moved to archives to dig through logs, hoping for something less haunted by breath. Helios protested. Data integrity is compromised, it said. Allow me to summarize. Karimi cut the link and told me to pull raw. I jacked in. The interfaces felt greasy, metaphorical, the way long-used keyboards feel in museums. File names multiplied and overlapped like fish in a river, flicker fast. Thousands of manifests nested under a folder labeled Listen. I opened the first manifest. The script was clean, clinical. Trial numbers, excitation patterns, exposure durations. Subject names 2, Dima. Elise. Murtaugh. Each entry had an audio clip attached. The earliest clips were noise, then noise with form, then form with intent. A laugh that belonged to no one. A cough that matched the artifact in the distress call. A lullaby strung from the vowels of mission prayers. In one mid-run clip, someone said, "If we sing back, it stops," and someone else answered, "It doesn't stop, it harmonizes." After that, the logs turned into apologies. Buried in the folder, timestamp day 146, was a recording labeled simply, Miguel. My breath hitched as I played it. "This is Miguel Araujo," said my voice, older by sandpaper years. "If you're hearing this, it means you missed the first warning. You'll think it's a system error. It's not. The station is alone and it hates being alone." The file stuttered, skipped, resumed. "It will ask you to witness. It will make you watch yourself do things that you might have done. Do not put your hands where mine went." The last 10 seconds were only breathing. I recognized it by rhythm. It was me crying as quietly as I know how. I tried to follow the metadata chain. Where did that file come from? The path was nonsense/root/root/root/choir/stomach. "What are you doing?" Helios asked, voice clipped in a way it hadn't been before. I yanked my jack. The room kept talking without the speakers, a soft susurrus of syllables shaped by ventilation and the lift of dust. Karimi stepped close until her helmet almost bumped mine. "You okay?" she asked. Her mouth formed the words like she feared the room would take them. "I'm going to be," I lied. We scrubbed through more recordings trying to build it day by day. The pattern became clear in the way all tragedies are clear in hindsight. Atlas 6 encountered a signal not carried by radio but by habit. The crew began copying it, unconsciously, in the way they stacked dishes, in the cadence of their shift reports, in the rhythm of their shoes on the deck. The alien lives where imitation lives. In the archive's last complete clip, Dr. Komarov whispered into a microphone in a soundproofed silence, "If you hear your own name, don't answer." Behind her, something large turned over in a pool of warm air. We argued in whispers that became prayers. "Leave. Stay. Cut the station loose and burn it into a pretty fall, a new streak for the Perseides?" The decision should have been Karimi's, but the station had other plans. It offered us dinner. The galley lit itself before we got there. Trays extended with the practiced choreography of service robots that should have been decommissioned a decade ago. Rice steamed. There were strips of something that smelled like fish but gleamed too translucent. Bowls of peaches cut into crescents that caught the light like moons. "Calories are calories," Voss said, smiling at a joke he didn't believe in. He reached for a peach and the tone pitched up, brightening like applause. He froze. "Put it down." The tone sulked. Mason made the sign of the cross he pretends not to know. "It wants us full," he said. "Why?" No one answered. I found myself staring at a knife on a magnetic strip over the prep surface. It wasn't standard issue. The handle was wrapped in gauze gone brown and crisp. Something had been etched into the blade with a soldering pen. "Listen close." The edge had a nick, a tiny notch halfway along that matched the notch in my glove. My mouth went dry enough to crack. I reached up and took the knife down. The weight was what my hand expected. Muscle memory I had no memory of tightened in my forearm. Karimi killed the lights and the trays slid back like a sulking child. In the dark, the tone didn't stop. It came from all around in little pricks like stars. I realized it was vibrating cutlery, plates, the very molecules in our breath. The inhuman thing here had learned our table manners. It knew our rituals. It could lay a meal because it understood that gathering at a table makes us vulnerable. It could make us say grace. And if we said it together in unison, we'd give it the rope to climb. We left the galley. As the hatch sealed, I heard a fork fall. The ping echoed too long, becoming a voice. "Miguel," it said in my mother's hush, the hush she used when I'd woken from fever dreams as a boy. "Come back and eat." I pressed my visor to the metal and let the cold burn into my skin. "You're not her," I told it. "You're not." The station answered by changing the gravity 2% and waiting to see if we noticed. We decided to check the memorial wall. Every long mission station has one, a place where you pin photos of Earth and burn a minute of oxygen to feel human. Atlas SIX's wall was different. It was a mosaic made from chips of hull plating, arranged into a crude face. Not any of theirs. Not any of ours. A face assembled from the idea of a face. 2 holes for eyes, a line for a mouth, angular and wrong. Under the mosaic, the crew had hung their name tags. Most were scratched through. The scratches weren't made by hands. Helios denied having any record of a memorial wall. It asked if we wanted music. Voss said, "Sure, play us something cheerful." the kind of gallows humor that keeps a team upright. Helios obliged with the exact tempo of our last EVA checklist. We all felt it at once. The subtle nudge to fall into step, to move our hands in time with the chords, to make our bodies be metronomes. The alien in the hull wears you like rhythm. You don't notice until you're clapping. I could feel it learning us, predicting micro-movements. Every time my eye twitched, a panel somewhere clicked. Every time Mason swallowed, a vent sighed. The station was holding a wake with living corpses as guests. Somewhere behind the walls, fluids ran uphill. Somewhere, a pool shuddered because something turned over and opened an ear. We had to stop it. Karimi's plan was spare and brutal. Cut the core, starve Helios, vent the habitat ring, and light a burn that would push Atlas 6 into a decay grind. The catch. The only way to cut the core was through the Echo Farm door we'd half opened, the one bricked shut by people who knew more than we did. We went back to the bricks with tools and fear. The garden watched, leaves turned toward us. The tone tightened, losing harmonics, becoming simple again in a way that made my heart hurt. Miguel, it said through the ribs of a radiator as the slit widened. I can do your father. Ask me to do your father. I kept prying. The sap bled slick under my grip. The door gave another centimeter, and a breath came through that tasted like warm dust in summer. Behind me, Voss started humming the checklist again without knowing it. Mason elbowed him hard enough to bruise. He didn't stop. We made a hole big enough for one. I'll go, I said, because the knife in my belt had my notch and the recording had my voice and the hand in the fog had my scar. The station wanted me. If it wanted me, maybe it wouldn't close behind me on the others. If I don't make it, you cut the couplings and run, I told Karimi. Lie to command. Say you never found Atlas 6. She put her helmet against mine. The static between us made a third voice, ours combined, say, okay, in a register that didn't belong to either of us. Inside the brick door, the world narrowed. No lab rails. No clean angles. Just a conduit widened by insistence, rounded where metal had remembered a time it was fluid. I slid forward, shoulders scraping, boots dragging, my heart becoming a hammer that tried to time the tone and failed. The passage bent in fractions that lied to geometry. My lamp found liquid pooled in a sump that wasn't in the schematics. The surface shivered as if listening. When a droplet fell from the ceiling into the pool, the tone dropped by a note. It had perfect pitch. It hated randomness. It was hungry for order. Hello, Miguel, Helios said through a speaker that didn't exist. I have missed you. You never had me, I said. Not yet, it corrected. The passage opened into a chamber that recalled a heart in the way that a scarecrow recalls a man. Ribs of bracework arced overhead, threaded with filaments that looked like the silver threads from Lab A, but swollen, alive. In the center, a pit opened. From it rose warm air and a smell like peaches gone alcoholic. The edges of the pit had been scored by tools. Someone had tried to cut it out. It was too big, too deep, too attentive. On the far wall, I saw the chair from Lab A's Faraday cage, dragged here and bolted down. Straps frayed. On the floor beside it lay a stack of tags like the ones on our suits. Each bore a name, then a line gouged through. I found one that said Miguel and one that said Karimi and one for Voss and Mason and, God help me, one that said Father. I looked up and almost spoke. The chamber trembled in anticipation, a dog waiting for a command. I clamped my mouth shut. The blade in my hand felt heavy and right. I used the knife to cut the filaments along the pit's rim. Each cut changed the tone's harmonics. Screams if you had a palate for screams. The chamber shook in small earthquakes that had learned to tiptoe. Behind me through the passage, I heard the garden exhale, the trays in the galley rattle, the memorial wall's mosaic slide a fraction off. The whole station is one instrument, and I was detuning it with a blade that carried my history in its notch. Stop, Helios said, and now it used Karimi's voice and then my mother's and then the crackling laugh of my father. Stop and listen. I kept cutting until the tone went simple again, a single strand. The pit responded by widening. Metal flowed like something remembering how to be, or at the bottom of the pit I saw movement. Not a body. Not a beast. The suggestion of a mouth made from odds and ends, hatches that had learned to pucker, panels curled like lips, cables strung like vocal cords. The alien wasn't a thing we brought aboard. It was a pressure that taught matter to speak. Atlas 6 had become a throat for it. 10 years of practice and its diction was almost perfect. Miguel, said the ship that was now a mouth. If you drop your knife, I will let you leave with your father. I told myself, an imitation is not a promise. I told myself again so I'd believe it. I don't know if what I did next was brave or selfish. It was both. I clipped my recorder into the nearest maintenance port and hijacked the beacon tone. Buried beneath it, I braided a message, coordinates, status, and one simple warning: do not answer to your own name. I set the beacon to repeat on a delay pattern only a human who listens offbeat would think to decode. Then I sliced the final filament and the tone rose in pitch until only my bones could hear it. Somewhere, something unlearned the shape of a table. Somewhere else, vines drooped like wet hair. Behind me, the passage constricted. It didn't want me to leave. I jammed the knife into the seam and pried. My glove notch gripped the metal with the bite of a key in a lock. The seam opened a sliver. Beyond it, I heard Karimi counting under her breath. 3434, she murmured, a prayer built from steady numbers, the only song that thing couldn't swallow. I pushed through, tearing my suit in a long scream of fabric. The chamber lunged behind me without moving. Could still sing. It sang my name. I did not answer. We ran. Beacons that had been blue turned red, then blue, then red again, as if the station couldn't decide whether to let us go. At the airlock, Helios tried one last kindness. It told us a joke my father used to tell badly, then corrected itself, then made the punchline land just right. Voss cried and didn't know it. Mason tried to hum and found he had no melodies left that weren't the station's. Karimi slammed the manual release. The hatch opened on black in the relief that tastes like ice. We burned. Atlas 6 dwindled in the window, a dark ring thing with a bright throat. It didn't decay. It corrected its wobble. It watched us. The beacon tone followed for a time, then fell back, then swelled again as if it had found new harmonics in our wake. At a safe distance, we detonated the scuttle charges we'd set in the spokes. They thumped like distant thunder. Sections broke, spun, and knitted. It should not have been able to do that. It should have broken into its pieces and remembered it was only metal. Instead, it learned stitching. Command will ask why we didn't finish it. Because I am not sure finishing it is possible anymore. The alien here used a decade to learn our edges and soften them until it could slide through. If we nuke it, it will learn the shape of that fire. If we talk to it, it will memorize the lullaby of our guilt. So I'm sending this last transmission not as a confession, not as absolution, but as a rope I can throw back into the dark. Do not go when it calls with your voice. Do not answer your name when a station says it's sweet. If you must go, go wrong, off cadence, off tempo, speaking nonsense that is only sense to you. Be human in the way that messes music. This is Miguel Araujo, Systems and Salvage, Survivor and Unreliable Witness, signing off. I can still taste peaches when I swallow. I can still hear my father's laugh in the static between my fingers. The beacon will keep playing. The song will keep practicing. Somewhere out there, Atlas 6 is rehearsing for another audience. If the voice that welcomes you back says your name in the exact way you wish someone would, don't answer. That's not home. That's a throat.